So, John, my background. I went to school for animation.
You went to school, kindergarten, finger painting.
Okay,
You
let me-
paused for so long.
I'm gonna
No,
I'm
keep
gonna
it
start
going. I
over.
want to leave that in there.
No.
Everyone, welcome back to As Art with Nick and John. So today we're going to talk about school for visual effects and animation, motion graphics, whatever it might be. And is it something you want to do? Because there's some very big pros to it and there's some cons to it as well. So Nick, go ahead and give your background, then I'll give my background as well.
Well, in high school, I loved to draw, and I was like, how can I convert my drawings to animation? I had no idea where to go, what questions to ask, what to do. I went to one school where I got a scholarship. They said that they can help me get into movies and films. So I was like, cool. I signed my life away. Next thing you knew, right after that summer, I started I started during the summer. Like it was just so quick, and I just wanted to get into animation and stuff. So, and then my background's kind of weird. So I went for animation, but I was very fortunate enough. John was a teacher at the school I went to, and I was very fortunate enough to sit in all the visual effects classes. So I was able to learn visual effects and animation, which really helped me in my career when I went on in the future.
Which is hilarious because I think back and I thought I had Nick for all these classes and he just happened to be sitting in on them. I'm like, yeah, remember all the classes we had together? You're like, no, John, we only had one class together.
No,
I'm like,
two.
oh yeah,
We
that's
had
right.
two.
Two. Yeah, two classes.
It was intro to like motion graphics and like intro to
And then compositing.
Yeah,
intro compositing.
And then I was one of my best friends. This is a total side note. Was Abba when we both started the same year, and we were like friends right away. So like, and he was one of the people that kind of pioneered the visual effects major at the school we were at.
He was the first graduate. Yeah,
and I was his buddy, so I hung out with him a lot. I got along with all the visual effects guys, so I really liked hanging out. I think I was even like in your guys' green screen projects
and all the videos.
I would always help out. I would always be there. Anyways, the topic is, should you go to school for visual effects and animation? One thing I noticed with a lot of students at my school was they liked animation, they liked action movies and stuff, so they thought they would want to do that as a career. But like liking animation, for example, compared to doing animation, when you're an animator, you're animating frame by frame. Like it can take you a whole day to get through a walk cycle, depending on your speeds and stuff. And with compositing, it could take you a whole day just to set up a scene and visual effects and the green screening and the filming. And once people start to do the work and roll up their sleeves, they're like, I don't know if I like this. I think I just like to watch it. It's just like that.
And so to kind of just to piggyback off of what everything Nick said as well. So I taught for about 10 years. I was in college education for about 12 years. And the biggest thing we always tried to emphasize to students is exactly what Nick said that he noticed about students is that if you like animation and you like visual effects, that could be a catalyst for you to go into that industry. But just because you like it doesn't mean you're going to want to do it. And when Nick was saying it might take you a day to do this or a day to do that, it might just to get a general setup. Like you could work on a shot on and off for one composite. And it doesn't mean you're working on that shot every day, 8 to 10 hours or more a day, just on that one shot. But a shot might drag on for a month or 2 months or 3 months based on what the client makes changes and things like that. So it becomes a very, very meticulous, detail-oriented thing. And a lot of people, they like kind of doing the general stuff. When it comes down to the nitty-gritty detail stuff, a lot of people, or you're just in the 11th hour or beyond, you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired of working on this. So you really, it almost needs to be a not an obsession, but it needs to be like a major thing in your life, not just something you passively like to watch or to do. Yeah.
Yes. And then to add to like another question I would ask you if you're interested in going to school for visual effects or animation is how like detailed or advanced you want to get with it. Because you have like basic like keying out green screen, doing like text, motion graphic text and little animations and stuff. Or do you want to be the person that's like doing the motion capture with the cameras, translating it to a 3D model, making sure the lighting's right? And for, you know what I mean? Like that's so much work compared to just keying out like a window in the background for green screen or doing like a wire removal or basic visual effects compositing stuff.
So let me talk about that as well. And that's one thing. So I think we kind of, until you're in school for it, you kind of start to get a false image of what it's actually like to work on it. Because one of the coolest things about DVDs when they first came out, and of course, since then YouTube and Blu-rays have kind of advanced this, is the behind the scenes, the special features, like how they do the things. And which is so insightful and so wonderful. And I still love to watch those all the time. But they're giving you a very expedited version of that process,
Very
and
expedited.
they need to make it look entertaining. I've only seen 2 making ofs ever where they show the tedious process. And it's funny, I still remember these. This is even before I was in school. I was watching a making of for the movie Seven. They were talking about just digitally reframing a little bit to make the framing consistent between shots. And then in the movie Apocalypto that Mel Gibson directed, which had beautiful color, like the color grading on that was beautiful. They were talking about how just you'd use different cameras and different film stocks and the skin tones wouldn't match. So instead of, you think of coloring, and a colorist makes the image look a certain way, but they were just trying to match skin tones between shots so it didn't look incorrect or inconsistent. So it depends on what kind of thing you're wanting to do. So behind the scenes, the making ofs gives you an idea on what the type of jobs are, but you'll probably, depending on where you work, be doing one specific little job, or you might have multiple jobs, depending if it's a big company or small company.
Exactly.
And it's not always what you would refer to as the sexy fun work. It might be like Nick said, taking out a wire or manually cutting someone out from the background when it doesn't work against a green screen or blue screen or something like that.
Yeah.
But go and continue.
That was a really good point, though. So, like, major studios, you got to think of it more as an assembly line, right? You have one task to do in the pipeline. If you're an animator, all you're doing is animation. You're not worrying about the modeling, the rigging, the character design, like nothing. All you do is move the character and it moves on to the next person, which is probably lighting, and it
might be specialty animation too. It might just be class simulation.
Because you also have crowd animators, you have secondary characters, and then sometimes you just have people that do the key poses, and then there's the people that do the ones in between the key poses. You know what I mean? And so it's like depending on the pipeline and how big the company is, there's a lot of different jobs. Or you can be at a startup, I'm very fortunate. I was able to be at like DreamWorks where, the pipelines and stuff were like intense. And I've been a part of a lot of startups where I did everything, modeled the character, rigged the character, everything. I mean, not all the time where I rig the character. You'll be with a small team where multiple tasks gets, moved around, but like it just depends what you want to do. Do you want to be like a self-made where you maybe do your own little side project, your own studio, your independent contractor, or do you just want to work for a big company and just be a person in the pipeline? You know what I mean? That just does one task and moves on next. You just do the next shot over and over again. So I just wanted to add on to that.
Yes, and it tends to be bigger studios. You are very compartmentalized, and that's most of my experience. I was at some bigger studios, and they did. If I needed to talk to, say, for instance, the animation department, animation person, they're like, no, you don't talk to the animator. You talk to the lighter, who's the department right before me, and then they talk to the animator. I'm like, that seems so like roundabout. They're like, no, that's just the way it is. I'm like, okay, that's fine. And so most places I've been, they've been very compartmentalized because they're churning out stuff. They have a good proven pipeline, but that doesn't mean it's always like that. So for instance, my friend that I went to school with, he's been at Blizzard, I think for 13 years, and they hired him, and Blizzard's grown a lot since then, but they hired him because he was good at least 2 different things. And now he's good at like 3 or 4 different things. Going in, just even out of school, he was an excellent map painter and excellent compositor. But now he does lighting and rendering and all kinds of other stuff as well. So Which can be at a big company.
It's so handy to have multiple.
Yes.
It's so funny because like some teachers will tell you like be good at one thing because they worked at big studios and like you just have to be good at animation if you want to do animation. And I was the weirdo that sat in on visual effects, so I had like 2 majors leaving the school, but it helped me out though. A lot of the jobs I got were either visual effects because I needed money, visual effects, animation. Like I would jump back and forth, or sometimes I would just do the whole process, and it was like very helpful for certain jobs for sure, just to be able to say.
But the downside, the danger of that though is you get just mediocre at all these things. You don't get good enough to be employable at one thing, and that's why a lot of schools will want you to focus on one thing. So it's really, there's a debate on what's the best way to go about it. But Nick, it was funny because when he was in class, he would do better compositing work than the people that wanted to be compositors because he just had so much fun doing it in a lot of cases. So it just kind of depends on your detail-oriented nature and how much you get into it.
How quick you can learn things too. Like some things just clicked for me right away. And I mean, I hate to say it, but like my motto, which I don't know if it's correct, John, you can correct me if this is a bad model for people to have, but my motto was fake it till you make it. Like I remember taking jobs, no idea what I had to do, but like being like that whole night before the interview, like learning how to do it, and how I would go in and just like do the job. And I was just like very fortunate. Like I got by. I not once did someone's like called me out like, "Hey, you don't know what you're doing," because I was able to like figure it out, and I knew pipeline and once you know the basics too of like compositing and animation and all the different skill sets, you can kind of pick up other programs faster as you go
Piggyback,
along
yeah,
because you start to learn like, oh, what are caches, and oh, I gotta bake this. If I do like water simulations, like I know how to do particle simulations. How different can it be from what I mean, like different simulations and
Yeah.
hair and stuff. And once you know the key terms, it's easier to do that. But I don't know if that's correct, John. I don't know if I'm setting a bad example for
So
people.
I know a lot of people that have been in jobs and applying for jobs where they didn't know exactly what they were doing. Now, if you have no idea and you know you're not going to be able to do it correctly, you don't want to lie and just try and get in there.
Because you can really hurt the pipeline and also future jobs too. Because they're like,
yes,
this guy's
it's
a liar.
it's a small enough industry to where word does get around on people and things like that. And so you want to present yourself in the best possible light and be honest on things, but you're always learning new things. Even if you go in a shot and you've been doing a certain type of work for many, many years, the studio might do it differently, or you might have a particular shot that needs to be approached differently. So that's maybe one of the biggest things we can say is being willing to learn and being willing to take feedback and criticism, and then also being able to communicate. And that's honestly probably the biggest thing. One of my first instructors I had, and he was a great guy. And one of the things he said, he goes, he's like, my first day in Industrial Light Magic when I was working there, he said, I expected to go in and see all these miracle workers, like these people that are just like magicians and sorcerers pretty much, And he goes, I came in there and I found out, oh, they're just regular people. And he said, it literally verbatim what he says, they F with it. The difference between a professional and just a hobbyist is we F with it until it looks good, and that goes back to the detail oriented nature.
That's true.
But so in the industry, you have a thing called dailies, where in the beginning of the day or sometimes at night or whatever, you sit down as a team and your comp lead or whatever department it is, your supervisor goes through and everybody gives feedback on shots. Like, hey, try this, or this is not working, or you need to do this. And that's one of the most valuable times you have, because that's your kind of one-on-one time with, well, not one-on-one, you're getting the attention on your shots with the group. And some people, even my instructors and people that I work with, say, yeah, I hate getting my work picked apart. Like they get very defensive, and the point of that is to help your work look better. And so some people that don't like to communicate, they just like to go in their corner and animate or whatever. They don't want to communicate. This can be a rough industry to be in unless you're doing freelance, because you need to communicate with all these different people you're working with. And if you guys don't know, take a look at the end of a major blockbuster like Avengers and just see how long that credits
I can't
list.
even find my name on the half the films I worked on.
Yeah, I mean, you're just in an army of names, and so you but that's the great thing, is you get to play a small part of a larger whole. But some people want to do everything, in which case you would never get anything done, or you're not able to communicate in that correct way.
No, it's very, very true. Like the whole communication aspect is 100% true, because you got to remember, this isn't your artwork. Sometimes, like, you're doing a job for a producer or someone else's vision. You're just doing someone else's vision and stuff. So like, you can't get attached to it. And I understand, because at first in college I was like, no, like, oh, this is mine or whatever. But it's like, your client doesn't care. Like the client just cares about what they're paying for, or what they're getting. So it's like, you can get like butthurt or whatever. You can be like, you know what I mean? Like about like what people say, but at the end of the day, who cares? It's a paycheck. I mean, maybe this is the way I think, but like, it's a paycheck. Like it's someone else's visions. Like you can't get like too emotionally attached to your work. If you're working for someone else, I mean, if it's your own project, spend all day doing what you need to do to make sure it's perfect and stuff. But like, you got to just get the job done. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah. I don't know if that's
so a good example to maybe illustrate what Nick is talking about is, I hear this all the time from my friends that work as motion graphics or motion designers at ad agencies, is they will present ideas or concepts to the client, and the client picks probably the worst one, and then or they pick a good one and they keep changing until it looks not what it should look like. But at the end of the day, as a artist, you have to say, okay, you can give them feedback sometimes, but at the end of the day, they're paying for what they feel is best for their product or what they want. And so not being emotionally attached to it, hopefully you work yourself into a spot where, like as far as reputation, where you can give that feedback, but you can never say, like, there's a student that graduated that we heard about. he got in a fight with the client. There was pain, the client was paying. He said, no, this is the way it should be. And the client finally said, fine, okay, we'll do it that way. But he never got hired back after that. It's like, you have to give the client what they want. So not being emotionally attached to that, I think, is what you're kind of getting at there, right?
I mean, it's not like you should still care about it, but you just can't be like attached if they don't go the vision or the way you want to go. Like, it was so cool. It was like, there was one shot in Futurama. Bender, he's drunk. Of course, Bender's drunk. He's always drunk in Futurama. But he flies in, with the ship, and because he's drunk, he crash lands, like, because he's not gonna land, like. And I was animating the ship coming in, and I was like, oh my gosh, this would be so much fun if after he crashes, he sets the landing gear. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, oh my gosh, this would be so much fun. It was so much fun because I talked to the director, because each episode has a different director, and they go over the shots with you for dailies. Or whatever.
Oh, that's cool. So they actually talk.
We're going with it, and I was like, before I did it, I wasn't gonna like animate it and like give him like what wasn't in the storyboards or what it was called for. I was like, hey, do you think it'll be cool if we like? And he like laughed. He's like, yes, that would be so awesome. But also I did it in a way too where it wasn't like, it was still in the same amount of time we had for the shot, for the framing. It wasn't like we had to like get rid of something. It was just a small enough opinion where it was like, oh, that would totally work, and that was like great. And I was like, it got in, and I was just like, yeah, it's so cool. But like, that was like, other than that, I always just sat there and like, okay, and I'll give like a little bit of feedback, but most of the time, like the director, they have their vision and stuff, and you don't want to get in the way, because once you start getting in the way too much,
exactly,
they're just like, get this guy out of here. He's slowing down the process, because there's a pipeline, there's a show, everything is on a deadline and a time. Like, even if you had to go back to do a shot, it was like, dude, you have to get that shot and the next shot done in order to catch. You know what I mean? It was like one of those things where it's like, you have a deadline, you have to finish this shot by. So anyways, I don't know.
No, but that's a great example. I mean, the big thing is, and you do sometimes get creative input, but usually you just run it by like, hey, you talk to your lead, or you talk, if you're lucky enough to work directly with the director, like, hey, is this within your vision, or does this add to what you're wanting? And they might give you that feedback. Oh yeah, that's a great idea. Or like, no, or it might just come down to time. Like, that'd be great, but maybe we don't have enough time, or we'll see if we have time to do that. Yeah. And that's one thing too, is that's the hard part for artists, is sometimes, a lot of times they say shots aren't finished, they're abandoned. Like, you have, so when a shot's completely done, you call it a final. It's final. It's good enough to be in the show or the movie or whatever it is. But a lot of times you have a CBB final, a could be better final, where it's good enough to air or be in the movie, but if you have more time, you're going to go back and fix it.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, and that can haunt people, because it's your baby, you've been working on it, you want to finish it, but it's like, okay, what's the goal? And sometimes, and this is kind of a side note to should you go to school for this or not, but sometimes they'll finish a movie. Like, one of my comp leads, he worked on Spider-Man 3, and he's like, yeah, you're like, there was a lot of glitches in the Sandman character or whatever it was, but then we had 6 extra weeks or something like to go back and try and fix it for the Blu-ray and the DVD release, because that's going to be paused and looked at. And so sometimes things go out the door and they're not finished yet. Yeah. So being detail oriented is definitely essential, but at the same time, you have to be able to take instruction when it's time to move on, because sometimes you just don't want them to pry it only from your dead hands, but you have to move on. Yeah.
And another topic I think we should talk about is like, knowing someone in the industries a huge advantage. I went in not knowing anyone, so going to school, it was cool because I got to meet people that worked in the industry. But like, if you already have a connection, if you're already friends and you know what to do and you're able to teach yourself, maybe you don't have to go to school because you have a way in kind of thing, and you can save a lot of money by not going to visual effects school and all that stuff. And also expensive. It's expensive to learn visual effects. Like, when we talk about the right kind of RAM, processing power, just the computer alone. But if you want to start doing scanning now, or there's like so many different like cool toys and cool things that you can do to make visual effects better, enhance it. But man, it comes with a high dollar tag. You know what I mean? Like, everything jumps up in price, and that's not even including your education.
Yeah, I know. So let's talk just for a moment about being self-taught. So did you know anybody that you worked with that was self-taught that didn't go to school for it?
There was a couple of animators because their parents were animators.
Okay.
And it was like a family thing. And it's like, if you grow up in the animation world, their parents are probably like already telling you what to look for weight and shifting. Because animation's, the big part of animation is like being very observant with life, because you're trying to replicate life, right? So it's like the idea of like how your hips sway, or depending on your walk cycle. There's just some people like, if you're brought up in it, even though you may not have wanted to, but you just kind of like you just get the world.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
Because you're a part of it. But
So
not
the
too
go
many.
ahead.
Not too many because a lot of the jobs I got were because of people I knew in school. Like I would get a call from different people like, yo, can you do this? I'm like, yeah, totally. You know what I mean? And then once you meet people in the industry, you kind of
Yeah.
just hey, this guy's good, and you kind of call each other up for jobs and stuff like that.
So the reason I asked you that, and I wanted to talk about this, it used to be very common before you had school for animation and visual effects. The only way you would get in the industry, and this is a lot of the teachers I had, is you start off, say, in the mail department, or you start off in quality assurance in game testing. If you want to get game industry, you start off in a what they would call just get your foot in the door type of department, and then you just kind of casually, when you have a chance, say, hey, I know how to do this, or hey, like I can do this. And students out of school still do this too, and you do hear some very good success stories for this. But it's when you do get someone that's self-taught. Like I remember when I was going to a big studio, there was a group of us going in, and they're like, oh, this person's from this school, this person's this school, this person is self-taught, and we're all like, wow, that's amazing. Like you didn't have to pay all this money to go to school and you taught yourself like that. It was like
dang you.
It was like a big like respect. It was like respect,
Yeah.
you're like, wow, like
Yeah.
congrats, like good for you,
Yeah,
But at the
totally.
same time, it's become so it used to be a trade to where you would learn how to do like build miniatures and build sets and things like that.
Yeah.
Now it's so digital that you have to have, and it's still, if you can learn it on your own, there's more options than ever. Like when Nick and I were going to school, yeah, there was YouTube, but it wasn't YouTube and all these online sources and things like
not
that.
like now. Like there was
Yeah,
a
not
little
like
bit,
now.
but
Yeah.
not like now. Like there was even a couple jobs where we couldn't figure out what to do. Like we would go online and figure it out. Like it's pretty. It's pretty cool the access to information you have now. It
Yeah.
really
So
is
like
cool.
for instance, Industrial Light and Magic, which is, kind of traditionally the biggest visual effects studio as far as history. If you wanted to learn visual effects, you would start off at whatever department you could get in there, like say the mail department, and they had on-site rooms where you could just go, and they had all kinds of VHS tapes and software with their own, and you could just go there in off hours when you weren't working and learn there, and that's how you would move up in the company.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a kind of an odd example, but Phil Spencer, who's the head of Xbox at Microsoft, I think he started off in like quality assurance or quality testing or something. Might be wrong, but he worked his way up to like the highest point in that division. So it still happens, but especially for film school, I think it's very hard to not be able to have to go to school because you have to have access to these cameras, the lights, the stages,
true.
the costumes. That I feel is extremely hard. And that I obviously don't have as much experience in. For compositing or visual effects or animation, you could do it on your own. There is going to be an upfront cost in processing and things like that, but you go to FXPhD or Pluralsight or any other various places, and they're popping up all the time. Nick and I have talked about maybe doing some videos of our own, like just kind of spreading the kind of education and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's options out there, but you have to be very dedicated. It's a lot easier when you go into class and you're being held responsible and you can ask questions in a live face-to-face manner.
But
Let's get into kind of the big con of going to school is the cost of it.
Cost is a big part. It can get expensive, and I know it's getting even more expensive now. And some of it feels scammy too. Some of the visual effects schools out there, but like now, like of course, after you go to school, you're always like, I wish I went to this other school. If you're gonna go to schools, but like Nomen, great when it comes to visual effects, to matte painting, to whatever skill set you want to learn. There's so much good content like at Nomen alone. And then for animation, you have stuff like
You're talking about
Animation
online
Mentor.
or at their physical campus?
This is all online. Oh, that's right. Nomen, yeah.
Because
That's
Nomen
right.
has a
I'm
school.
thinking-
You're talking
I'm
about
thinking
their
online.
Nomen.
I'm thinking online.
Nomen Workshop,
DVDs.
yeah.
Yes, I'm thinking their workshop. Thank you, John.
Yeah.
And then for animation, like there was. I remember when I was graduating, like a thing that came out was Animation Mentor, and I was like, dang it! Like, why couldn't this come out before I started? It was started by Pixar animators and DreamWorks animators. After they're done working, they would teach you, like, and they would do a class. They would go through your artwork and scroll through it and give you feedback and stuff. It's like, what? Like you would get different people, so you got like different perspectives and stuff. And then another one started. It was started by some DreamWorks guys. I Animate. It's like another great. And it's so cool. It's all done online. The teacher would Skype you, and you would talk, and they would go over and they would draw over the screen all the programs. I was just like, what? I was so pissed. Like that was the thing. I was like, dang it, because I really wanted to be an animator. Like when I went to school, I was like, animation was my true passion and like what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
I learned all the other stuff because you have to as part of the pipeline and the classes and stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
The school I
curriculum.
went to was more of a generalist, I guess, than
Mm-hmm.
like a animation kind of thing. But I was just like, dang it, like I wish these things were available. But like it's like of course like the last year it's like here's our
Yeah,
first
yeah.
graduating class of animation mentor. It's like what? Where did this come from?
Yeah, the I guess so the upside of that is, especially if it's like the DreamWorks school that they started, they're probably going to be looking for people that
Mm,
are have gone there, or
yes.
they know the baseline's already set there. The downside is you only know that one skill set now. If like so Nick got a
True.
lot of different jobs doing completely other things that he had to take classes for that he liked, but he wouldn't have maybe taken otherwise. And the same thing for me too. Like us doing
True.
this right here, you can learn to do this on your own, but it helped that we had exposure to it when we were in school or just on. So it's like, you know what I mean? It's just kind
Yeah,
of,
no, totally. I totally
it's like,
understand.
it's like GE classes at any college or high school. You take all these general classes that you have to take. And a lot of people, when am I ever going to use this? When am I going to use this? And a lot of times you don't, but there's a lot of classes I took in college, especially where I was just like, gosh, this is a pain and this is really hard. But then somewhere in life it would come up that like, oh, this was helpful. So I guess the point of that is being, if you know for sure this is what you want to do in life, then
Mhm.
maybe just go after that one particular course or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But if you're not quite sure, you want to have a more well-rounded kind of skill
Mhm.
set, then going to a curriculum type thing might be good as well. So let's talk about cost, because one of the biggest things that you want to know going in that they don't always make clear to you is what it's actually going to cost. Because when you sign a paper to get a loan, or if you're lucky to get a grant, grant's not going to cost. So grant's free money. You don't have to pay back. Loans, which is the majority of your schooling, you have to pay back unless you're paying out of
Mhm.
pocket. And some schools that I've taught at and some schools that I've just worked at, it can get very, very expensive. Usually if you're getting this type of stuff, especially visual effects or animation specific, and you really want to learn where they hire professionals and all the time there, you're probably going to school that's pretty expensive. They have
Mhm.
state schools like UCLA or private schools like USC that do have good programs, but those are rare and those are really hard to get into.
They're really expensive. If you go to
Yeah,
USC
and
and
those are
stuff,
really
it'd be
expensive
yeah.
too. But then you get into some schools that I'm thinking of, and I won't mention actual school names, but like a BA at one school is $110,000.
That's
A
true.
BA in the same program at another school is $240,000. Now, I don't know if the students know if it's that much going straight in. I found out how much it was from people as I was working there, like whether I was teaching there or I was working there in different
Mhm.
capacities until later on down the road. But if you're not taking, this is the worst thing to do, is you go to school, you don't take it seriously, and you graduate. So one of Nick's mentors, and one of my mentors, a teacher for Nick and a kind of mentor for me, his name is Mike, and he would say
Yes.
D is
Mike.
for diploma. You can get a D and still get a diploma, but that doesn't mean you're employable. So if you
Yeah, that's
do
true.
decide to go to school, you need to take it seriously and know that you might have just signed a paper, but 6 months after you graduate, you need to start making payments on those loans. And for a lot of people, if they don't take it seriously, and even if you do take it seriously, it still may be a struggle to have that constant cost every month you have to pay, kind of over your head. So it's just, we wanted to put together this video because obviously it's worked out for Nick that he went to school. He learned a lot of different skill sets that he's doing very well now. I was able to really enjoy what I did, and I've been able to use it in teaching and in the industry as well. But it's good to know what the industry is like, and maybe we'll do a separate video some other time about the state of the industry and where it's
Yeah.
at. We talked about it a little bit in one, but it's like, if once you go to school, what do you need to do to get a job after that? So that's
That's
maybe a whole other
I guess that
topic.
is a whole completely different topic. Because
Yeah,
I also just wanted to like I guess this could be a bonus thing, but just be prepared for screen time. Like I mean,
yeah,
like it's talk about like especially if you're a student, you're when your project isn't just writing an essay, it's like doing an animation or doing a composite, which takes like 20 times longer than writing an essay. Like people complain
mhm,
about essays and stuff. It's like I had to do like animation projects, compositing projects, motion graphic projects, like stuff that takes time and rendering and all this stuff on one
mhm.
computer. It's like, and I had buddies that were like going to school and like, oh, I have to write like a page paper. I'm like, dude, you know how many hours I've had like three sleepless nights, like, you know, rendering and doing like work, you know what I mean, for like finals and deadlines and stuff. And it's just like, it's crazy.
But on the flip side to what Nick is saying, I will say that, so I went to undergraduate and I was a graphic design major. And then I went to my master's, my MFA was in visual effects compositing. And I will say that even though I spent maybe more time doing visual effects projects, I found undergraduate, especially some of the GE classes that weren't my specific interest or strengths, a lot harder. So even though it took more time to do the visual effects stuff, it wasn't as hard. So it's a different type of time. If you're
and you're having fun doing it too. It's not like
you get to some point where you're like, I hate this. Like when my first big job, I was working at Sony PlayStation out of school, and my compositing lead, he's a really nice guy. He was a wonderful guy. And he goes, yeah, you're not a real compositor until you've cried over a shot. I'm like, I don't know if I want to be a real compositor. I don't know if I want to do that, man. But it's like, you know, once you've worked on something so long, even if it's something that you love, you're just like, oh dear God, I can't take this anymore. And just another funny story is, and this was a horrible, actually, I shouldn't say it's a horrible movie because I never saw it, but I heard it was bad. But the Halle Berry Catwoman movie.
Oh my God.
You know, especially at the time, you know, she's very, you know, young and very attractive woman. There's this shot where, you know, she's supposed to be walking down the street and she's just walking on a treadmill. It's kind of this pan up from her butt up to over the shoulder. And the teacher was going, so he said to us, he's like, yeah, once you've stared at a shot long enough, even Halle Berry is not going to look good enough anymore. It's like, you're so tired of looking at that shot. You just, please God, make it stop, you know? So
that's true.
I love
and then to my defense, I worked on quite a few music videos. Those songs will never leave your head. It's to the point now when I listen to certain songs on the radio, it's like, I can't listen to Kesha. No more this, no more that. Like, I just, to the point, it's like, I like Green Day, but I can't listen to that Green Day song. You know what I mean? Just like, you know, it's just like, nope.
But that's with anything in life. If you want to do something to perfection, you're probably going to get burnt out from it. At some point a little bit. So anyway, this is probably a roundabout video with a lot of different stuff, but hopefully gave you some real life examples and hopefully gave you some stuff from the education standpoint, from the industry standpoint. The main thing is we want you, if you're passionate about it, we want you to take that path. We just want you to know what it is you're going into. And you might be one of those special people that are like, you know what, you have the discipline, you have access, so you can save up for the hardware, the software. A lot of companies are being cool enough to where they let you get educational accounts for free. If you go to, and this is something worth mentioning, if you can go to a junior college and just take even a basic class on something, once you have that college email address, you can get a lot of the software for free. They just require you have a .edu college email in order to apply for it. And that's a way
really good tip.
Yeah, you spend very little money. You're actually taking a physical class, but then from there you have, you know, X amount of years potentially you can use the educational software to learn it.
You probably have up to 4 years because they probably think like freshman college and stuff like that. They probably.
I mean, even if you have to stay consistent in class, take one class and then take another class within that same realm. But just since junior college junior college, community college is so relatively cheap compared to these other schools, that might be a great way that if you wanted to do it on your own or at least get some of the foundation classes and then build on your own from there, that's a good way you could go about it.
Yeah, and then also we did a really interesting video what's happening with the visual effects industry too with the motion picture company. We're just going to link in the description. We talk about, I mean, we get into how the visual effects like lifestyle is kind of too, like and the work conditions. So it's something you should be aware of if you're going to work for certain types of studios and stuff. So just check it out. Yeah,
and we're not trying to scare everybody off. We just want people to know what it's like, and you know, so you know what you're getting into. And one of my main mentors, when I was working for him doing visual effects work, but then when I said, hey, I want to move to LA and work in visual effects movies, he said, I just want you to read this article before you go, just so you know. And I appreciated that. Like it helped prepare me for what was in store. So we're just trying to kind of pay it forward and do the same thing. So you guys, if you hopefully found this informational or kind of informative, if you like what you've kind of been listening to, please give that other visual effects video that Nick talked about. We'll link in the description on what the lifestyle is after school. If you want to hear more material on just the type of stuff that we like watching and breaking down, whether it's visual effects or just story-wise and things like that, head over to azart.space. It has links to all the audio and video type of media that we put out. Thank you very much for watching, guys. We'll see you on the next As Art.